Hey folks, you know I take my trail camera intel pretty seriously. It's a huge part of how I build my hunting strategy, and I'm always looking for gear that just flat out works. Stuff I can rely on. Backed by solid people and the best customer support in the business. That's exactly why I run Tacticam Reveal cell cameras. Whether you're just getting started or you're a full-blown data junkie like me, they've got a camera to fit your budget and your hunting style. My go-to currently is the Reveal 3.0 series with fully integrated GPS. These things are dead simple to set up. Less fiddling, more scouting and hunting. And they run on most major service providers and will automatically connect you to the strongest signal in your area. So no more hiking to the top of a ridge just to realize you've got the wrong service provider. Been there, not fun. Here's the kicker. You don't even need an SD card. That means fewer trips in, less pressure on your spots, and more real-time intel sent straight to your phone. And if you pair it with a Reveal solar panel or a lithium cartridge, you can keep those cameras running longer and spend more time doing what actually matters. Scouting new ground, dialing in a setup, or maybe, just maybe, finally cleaning the garage like you told your wife you would before the season started. Don't just take my word for it. Check out Tacticam Reveal at tacticam.com. Tacticam. Everything you need to take your hunting to the next level. Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Oscio gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Oscio's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Oscio. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Welcome to the Truth in the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Tacticam Reveal Cellular Cameras. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 442. Today, I'm joined by my buddy, Michael Varady, to talk about adapting to new areas and why woodsmanship still matters. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. Hope everyone had a chance to get out this past weekend and enjoy. Hopefully, you had some nice weather. Hopefully you had some free time to spend some time with some family, some friends, maybe do a little barbecuing, just doing the things that you like to do. But hopefully, you had a chance to kind of pause and reflect on why we actually have the weekend, the holiday weekend that we have, and everything that people have given before us to allow us to have the freedoms that we have to do the things that we like to do. I know every Memorial Day weekend, I kind of try to take a moment, whether it's by myself or whatever the case is, and just reflect on that and be grateful for all the things that we have and remember the people who sacrificed a ton to give us the things that we do have. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into today's episode. Before we do that, though, this weekend, beyond all the stuff that I just mentioned, for me, in terms of deer hunting, really kind of signifies the beginning of deer season. Now, I know, some seasons, we're talking August roughly that are opening. So we're just, a few short months out before seasons will start to open. But for me, this is kind of like the cutoff point of like, all right, everything's in the past, the hay's in the barn to a degree right now. Truth be told, I still have a camera or two to get out. And like I've talked about in the past, the scouting that I was planning to do isn't going to be as extensive as I had hoped. I got the bare minimum done that I needed to get done the past couple weeks. Like I said, still have one more camera to put out. It's in an area that I've turkey hunted in the past. I'm familiar with it. I've just never put a camera in it for whatever reason. It's been on my radar to do it for probably the past 3 seasons and just haven't had time and haven't gotten to it. So I'm probably going to try to do that today, run out and hang a camera in that area. I've got some time. The weather's nice and cool, so I figure I'll take advantage of it. It's probably really an early season spot for me, is at least what I'm it's kind of how I'm judging it. There's some things there that are in play that would suggest it's probably a really good early season spot. Would be my guess. There's a terrain feature there that I'm going to try to use to my advantage. We've got some really good access to it, a couple access options, which is awesome. So we'll see how that area shakes out. It also might be one of those areas that I just don't get to this year. I will be taking a trip at the end of, I don't know exactly what the dates will be yet, but sometime around the end of October, beginning of November, like I usually do. This trip might be a little longer than I've taken in the past, just by the nature of my, remote work capability. So we'll see. So really for me, I just got a couple weeks in PA this year to try to get things done. But we'll give her hell regardless when the time gets here, and hopefully we'll have a few prospects, whether it's local or whether it's in the North Piece that I like to hunt. Hopefully we'll turn something up good and have a fun fall, and then look forward to making a travel trip. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show. Have my buddy Mr. Michael Varady on, the East Coast stick bow. You guys know him, you love him. He's been on a couple different times. In New Jersey, the dude just seems to get it done every year, multiple good deer for the area that he's hunting. And so it's always great talking to him. This year, he made a little bit of a transition back to shooting a compound. He still shoots, stick bow consistently, but he took the compound out this year. And so we talk a little bit about that, about kind of, the switch back. And, we've talked about in the past why he made the switch to a traditional bow, because he was working through some target panic stuff, and the traditional bow really helped him with that. And we talk a little bit about that. And then beyond that, he's getting ready to make some larger life moves and life decisions. And with that, he's going to leave a lot of what he's known and been successful with in the area that he lives behind. And he's going to be moving to an area that will certainly give him an opportunity to chase more mature deer more consistently. But with that comes, the price tag of having to learn all new areas, right? And not just all new areas, but all new areas that are wildly different in terms of topography, terrain, habitat, etc., than he's grown up all of his life hunting. Now, he's made a couple trips out to this general area on a travel hunt in the past. I think it was like 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And so we talk a little bit about what his process will be like, trying to figure it out, a new area, and what his expectations really are, and kind of like recalibrating those expectations when you're starting new. To ground yourself in what the reality might be. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. As always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And you will recognize, if you're watching the video, that the good-looking gentleman on the other side of the screen, Mr. Michael Varady. What's going on, buddy?
How's it going, dude? How are you?
Good, man. You're looking good, dude. The beard's looking tough, brother.
Oh, man. I don't know. It's a little patchy, but I've just been letting it go.
Yeah. What's the because I think when I first met you, you were always clean shaven for like the longest time.
I always just had like a little scruff or whatever, and like I always like hesitated to let it go because it doesn't grow like up on my lip, and I'm like, man, I don't know. So I just started letting it go. Like,
did you feel like you were looking too Amish?
Yeah.
You might have to start doing some gun drives. Is that what you were feeling?
Yeah. I got suspenders on. Our next podcast, I got suspenders on, straw hat. Dude, funny thing is, when I was like 5 years old, I used to tell my mom, "Wish I was Amish," sort of like.
Yeah.
Because I always admired like the way they lived, but the more I go like hunting out west, I hear that like,
it gets a little Western.
Yeah. People get mad at them for.
Well, it's like, you have the part of PA here. Well, I guess it technically would be west for you, since you're in Jersey. But if you go a little west of me, like to Lancaster, or depending on where you're from, it's like some people call it Lancaster, some people call it Lancaster. So get my pronunciation correct so I cover all bases. But that's like a lot of folks. And my wife actually went to college there in Millersville, but like in Ohio too, like pretty good population, right? But it's interesting, like admiring like their lifestyle, because it's there's obviously with any culture there's like oddities about it and stuff like that, right? But I think at like the base level, like their like dedication to community, family, and the fact that they kind of like wall themselves off from like I don't want to say like technology and just like all the things that we see as benefits, and a lot of times they are benefits, right? Yeah. But like when you let them kind of saturate your life, they become deterrents to a degree.
I always admired it. I always thought it was like super cool the way they lived, and like I don't know. I just remember being a little kid looking at the horse and buggy going, I wish we were Amish.
Right? Yeah, I love watching those videos of people drifting their horse and buggy. You know what I mean? You ever see this? Like, dude, they're getting after it. But that's a good parallel, like to hunting, because when you think about like the people that we had, I guess I'll say it this way. I'd be curious your perspective, because this is one of the things I want to kind of talk to you about. Because like, when I first met you, and you and a bunch of other guys were part of what inspired me to move to a traditional bow, and that's the flag I'm going to carry this year officially.
Yeah.
And then you went and you shot a compound last year. And we talked about that the last podcast we did, because you were considering kind of breaking that out.
I think I switched over that mid-season, or I forget. I think it was mid-season last year.
But what I was going to say is that a lot of the people that we look to as far as, I don't want to say inspiration, but maybe I'll say like we look up to the older generation of hunters, right? They had so much less, technology. And we always kind of say, you'll hear people talk, and, it doesn't matter what form of it is. It's like, it could be a sport, you have this admiration, or that you romanticize the people who have come before. Right.
Yeah.
But you almost do as much as you can to distance yourself from the way that they did things to a degree. Right. Because you think that like the technology pieces and stuff like that are the thing that's going to give you a leg up, when, if you look back at how they approach things, it was never necessarily about that. It was about the woodsmanship. It was about being in the woods and like learning your craft. Right. I think aside from like the technology piece, it was really like a dedication to learning the craft. Yeah. Right. And I think we use technology as an excuse to not have to learn our craft. I think technology can help us be better at learning our craft. Right. And that to me is like how we kind of probably should use it. But I think a lot of times we use it as a replacement for learning our craft. I mean, would you kind of agree? And I think that might be why sometimes we romanticize some of those people that live a little bit more primitively.
Yeah, 100%. I think you need to use it. Like that's just my opinion. I think if you're not, if you're not using cameras and maps and, your phone, and I think you're going to be left behind just because things aren't the way they were in the 90s, I think in the 90s there was bigger bucks around. I think everything, it's like people were just kind of winging it, but there was every deer is accounted for now, at least in my area. You know what I mean? Like very rarely does a buck get shot that nobody knew about. But back in the 90s, whoa, where did that deer come from? Nobody knew about the deer, So now it's like, I think you need, if you're going to compete with these guys nowadays, I think you need to be using the technology. But I always say, like, I wish they would, part of me wishes that they would ban it all. Like, ban cameras, especially in my area, ban bait. I would love that. Like, and I bait sometimes. Like, I'll be the first to admit it, because I can't compete with the guy next, with the 100 pounds of corn out, on the property next door. Like it. So essentially, if I'm patterning deer, I'm just patterning them on his bait pile, so. Right. And, and that's, and I mean, I don't want to, we could talk about bait probably for an hour, but but it's also not as I don't think the guys that live in states where you can't bait always think it's so easy to bait a mature buck in, but it's really like it's you don't just put out bait and have a 5-year-old walk into it. It's
right. And I think it's also if you were the only person. People who think that, you could put out a bait pile and kill a good deer. It's like, well, yeah, probably is true if you're somewhere where nobody else baits and it's the first time that it's happened, and a deer has no aversion to a bait pile being put out, right? And it's like, oh, hey, here's a free buffet, but they'll quickly learn that there's danger associated. It's the same thing when guys overhunt food plots, right? Like if someone has a food plot and like, we had like our family farm. It's part of the reason why I stopped hunting it years ago, is that we had some plots and stuff like that. And, our goal at the beginning was to really just use the plot as like a magnet, right? To get deer to spend more time on the property, maybe have some does bed a little more, a little bit more in the interior of the property as like a first line of bedding. That way it would allow the bucks to bed on like the more peripheral bedding that we had that was still on our property before you got to the neighbors, right? So it was just more to try to draw them in closer to be able to hunt them a little easier. And the plan was to never really hunt the food plot until like late season. Like don't hunt the edges of it, leave it alone, let the deer feel really secure in that area. That way they continue to use like the pinches and the funnels that we know that they want to use to get to and from, right? And it's hunt them in those, their transition period between, from bed to food or wherever they're spending time. And that lasted all of about 2 months until like people just couldn't help themselves from like sitting on the edge of the food plot, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
like, of course, all of a sudden, like it changed like the dynamics of how deer were moving and things like that. And then, you know, the older guys in camp are like, why aren't I seeing any deer in the food plot? I'm like, well, because you sit there every day. I'm like, they know you're there, you know?
Yeah.
They know you're there. So it's the same thing, right? It's like it works for a while until you ruin it. And humans just have a way of
Ruining
things, everything.
Yeah.
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 But so you switched to the compound this year. What was the kind of driving factor behind that? Because I know for the longest time, like when you made your switch to a traditional bow, it was because you had some target panic, and you were like, it solved, like the traditional bow solved your target panic.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand. I won't say that I had target panic necessarily. I did like a while ago.
Yeah. Don't think about it too much.
Yeah. Our buddy Greg Litzinger kind of helped me through that at one point. But I didn't really understand what you were talking about until I picked up a longbow and started shooting it consistently. And I understood kind of what you meant, because I had to be so dialed in to things where it's like, if I weren't, I couldn't shoot it at all. If that makes sense. It was almost like an extra level of attention I had to have, and it kind of removed me away from thinking about all the other things that would usually give me panic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like if I'm shooting a recurve or a longbow, like if I'm not shooting it every day, like I don't want to hunt with it, you know, and I just feel like I wasn't shooting enough. And so that's a contributing factor, is that I just wasn't shooting enough. And I mean, I would take 3 or 4 shots before I left in the morning. You know, even in the dark, I'd open the garage and have the light on in the garage, and take a couple shots before I left for the woods, just to like, I had to be fresh with it all the time. I couldn't just let it sit on the wall and pick it up and shoot it. I had to be fresh. And then, so I just wasn't shooting enough. And then I bought a compound. I was messing with it, and my buddy left a hinge release in my truck. I think we talked about that last time, maybe. So the hinge release is like what absolutely changed my compound game. And like, you know, 20 years ago, somebody gave me a hinge release, and I punched myself in the face and I just gave it back to him. And I'm like, this isn't for me, you know? And I really wish I gave it more time. I wish I set it for me and really gave it a shot 15, 20 years ago, because it just changed my game. I was always like a hang up low and then come up with my pin, and the second I would ride that leg up, and the second my pin would hit brown, it was gone, you know? Yeah. And now, like I hunted with the hinge this year, and I was able to hold the pin on the deer. Just hold it on the deer comfortably. Pin's on the deer, waiting for a shot. Start to work through it. I can make it go a little bit faster, but really, like every deer I shot 17 times, because it's like, I'm like, go off. Oh, he's still broadside. Boom, you know, but I'm still working with it, but it's really changed the game for me. So the hinge releases, you know, I even shot a turkey with the hinge release, you know,
damn.
So I'm just like completely, I don't see myself ever going back to a button, because I can transfer. I could transfer from the hinge back to a button for a couple shots before my old habits kick back in. You know, maybe won't be able to do it, but I get real jumpy, real punchy, I guess you could call it, you know?
Yeah. But I would say, do you think the hinge made that big of a difference, or do you think all the time you spent behind a traditional bow made more of a difference?
The hinge, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I would struggle with. Eventually, I switched to a traditional bow to get away from the sight, which is what gave me the panic. But eventually, it creeped in with the.
Really?
And I struggled with that, even with to this day. Like, I'm a pre-aimer, because I'm just like, I want to be on target already. Because if I have to come up, I do the same thing with a recurve. As I come up, I'm like, bah! I don't know what it is about my brain. Yeah, it's really
interesting.
And that started when I was younger. Like, when I really started taking archery serious, it wasn't like a hunting thing. You know, I shot my bow in the yard. I shot deer fine. The second I went to my first 3D shoot, and there was a crowd of people behind me, I felt this like pressure, you know,
get the arrow off the string as quickly as possible.
That's where my target panic developed. it's been a battle.
I almost feel like, and I've mentioned this on here before, that like once I started shooting my longbow consistently, I still shoot my compound once in a while because like I'm not a person, like I plan to hunt with the longbow this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not a person who will never pick up a compound again. Like it still has a place for me. I was literally just talking to my buddy Chad about this because we're heading to the Midwest this year to hunt some open country. And he asked me, is it longbow or bust this year for you? Like in the open country, like, cause spot and stalk on the ground. Right. And I was like, yeah, I was like, that's it. I was like, that's my plan. And I said, he's like, so the compound's not even coming along. And I was like, well, no, I was like, the compound's going to come along. I was like, because I was like, I only have so many days to hunt. And if I'm consistently getting 30 plus mile per hour winds and things like that, I was like, it really limits my opportunity. Right. I was like, and I don't mind having some limited opportunities because of the equipment. I was like, what I don't want to do is have limited opportunities because of the weather necessarily. Right. I was like, one day I can spend that time glassing and scouting and whatever. I was like, but if I get like 3 days in the forecast of where it's just going to be ridiculously windy, where it's taking a traditional bow shot would be borderline unethical unless I'm like 5 yards out. I was like, I can't give up 3 days of a travel hunt trip, because it's too windy. I was like, that would be the reason why I would bust it out. I was like, but otherwise I was like the plan is like for the longbow, but I actually shoot the compound markedly better now than I did previously.
Really?
Like anytime. Oh yeah. It's like, even if I haven't shot it in a while, like I'll pick it up and just like rip some arrows and I'm just like dropping dime pieces with it.
It's all mental. It's probably because you're going into it and you're going, this is easy.
This is easy.
I got a sight in front of me. All I got to do is put the pin on there,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, and I feel like it's because the level of concentration I have to, like personally, this may not be the same for everybody, but for me personally, the level of concentration I have to shoot the longbow well is far surpasses. I felt like the reason why I would shoot poorly sometimes with the compound was because I would get lazy, because I was like, I can do this, like whatever, put the pin there, like let it rip. I
know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
With the longbow, it's like if I let my mind wander just for a split second, the shot's shit.
Yep. You have to be completely in it. That's why, like, I've been at 3D shoots and had somebody look at me and go, how do you kill deer? Because I'm like missing and butt shooting and everything, but I'm having fun. I'm BSing with people. I'm just talking, winging arrows, like that's at a 3D shoot, you know what I mean? And like, it's hard to explain to people, like when you're in the woods and you're drawing back on an animal, you are never so in that moment. Like it's two completely different things to me. I've never been like a great target art, you know what I mean? Like otherwise I guess I'd be winning competitions and shooting competitively, but like I've just always been a bow hunter, but it's just I'm just not in the shot at a 3D shoot. There's so much going on. We're talking. I'm in mid conversation with somebody, then it's my turn to shoot, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And like I wish I could say I was that strong mentally that like I could just break from a group and conversation, just get in that zone every target. There's a couple targets where I will be. There's a couple targets where I'll 100% be in the zone and be like, oh, that shot felt good, smoked them. But then half of them, it's like I said, you're talking to someone and it's your turn. It's your turn. You run over there, you take a shot, and then you go back to your conversation. So which I don't know if it's good. I don't know if that's how you pick up bad habits, but I just enjoy being out there shooting.
Well, I mean, I think there's something. Excuse me. I think there's something said for keeping things fun.
Yeah.
Because I think the quickest way to excuse me. I think the quickest way to kill something is to remove the fun from it, right? Even if, I think you'll get people who say, or who are, I don't want to say experts, but are, fanatical at anything, whether it's shooting a bow, a pistol, like whatever it is, whatever the thing is, it takes concentration. You'll get groups of people who say that you should practice like you want to perform, right? Because you're going to transfer those habits. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? But I also think there's a lot of truth to if you don't make it fun, you're never going to do it often enough to even create any habit that is worthwhile keeping.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm sure whenever you're shooting in your yard or when you're shooting on your own and you're working, it's a different approach.
Totally different. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like usually, if I'm gonna hunt with the recurve, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, month out from the season, I start hanging tree stands and start putting a 3D target in every different scenario. So I'm in the stand. I'll literally hang a stand and I'll set up every scenario I could be in. A 10-yard shot, 20-yard shot, 22-yard shot, broadside, and I'll just, it's something that I do, but it's probably pretty dumb. I have to set like the stage for every shot, so I'm like,
I don't think that's dumb. I think that's actually really smart.
I'll set a scenario. I'll be like, all right, I'm in Ohio, public land, 150-inch, 8-pointer just walks in. Like, what am I going to do? Call my pants down, take the shot, boom. Like, I got to set the stage, and then, so I try and
there's a lot of value in visualization, that I think I think that's one aspect of hunting that people who, if they want to have success, whatever that mark is for them, is to see it over and over again. Right. Because it's a big thing. Like when you listen to people name a sport or name even like a high level, bow hunter or even like a high level archer, right? Like they typically visualize the thing that they want to happen over and over again, right? It's a big thing in sport. It's like you'll visualize yourself catching the touchdown, hitting the home run. Like you'll see it over and over again. That way, when you're in that scenario and that opportunity comes up, it's not like you've never been there before, right? Like physically you might be there for the first time, but mentally it's like you've taken that rep over and over again. That was the thing. And I talked about this after I shot that deer out in the Midwest a couple years ago, was that I think I did a podcast with my buddy Jake, and he was asking me about it. And I forget what the question was, but what I had said was that whenever the scenario started playing out, it was different than what I had visualized in my mind. I was like, but I visualized me killing that deer like all off season, I was like, so it wasn't like it was a net new experience for me. I was like, and it's actually, I think it actually keeps you calm too, because it doesn't feel like it's new. Like, does that make sense? Like, it makes sense to me that you set up the scenarios in the yard, or the scenarios in like with your tree stands. Cause it's just like, to me, it speaks to like partially why you're as successful as you are.
Yeah, I try and make everything as like realistic as possible, and then when it happens, it's never the same. It's never the same, Your heart rate's in your throat, and I like just learned how to control that, because I was like, I think we've talked about it before, but I got buck fever so bad when I was a kid that I'd have like an outer body experience. So learning, like, it's been years of working on that, breathing and talking to yourself. And so I kind of know what to expect now. And I know how my body's going to react. And I try and just pretend like I'm in that moment when I practice, when I really practice, not like when I'm not out having fun, like a 3D course or whatever, And if I'm going to hunt elevated, I practice elevated. I think that's like a huge thing. It doesn't really matter as much with the compound. That matters what a stick bow is. If you're going to hunt elevated, practice elevated, because that's where I messed up in the beginning.
Yeah, that's something that I need to build into my repertoire now. Like a lot of, it's a flat ground a lot of times. I did kind of take, and I told Jared this. I was texting with Jared Scheffler the one day, and I said that I've been practicing his like oddball shots where it's like I'm laying on my side underneath, like I got some bushes in the back of my yard, and I've got like two targets. I've got like my main target that I shoot at typically, then I got like another target that's kind of like almost like it's bedded, in another area of the yard, and I can lay underneath some bushes and underneath some cedars and shoot off my side and stuff like that. So I've been doing that just to practice funky angle shots. I need to get elevated as kind of my next thing. I mean, I of course have some time to get there, but that's one thing I do need to work on. The one thing I wanted to ask you though is the last time we chatted, I asked what your ideal distance was to take a shot, with a traditional bow. And you had mentioned to me that you really like that kind of 18, 19-ish yards roughly is like kind of like your sweet spot. my question, so this is what I've been playing with a little bit, right? Because my shots come together pretty well. I shoot pretty consistently, as far as like, I can put arrows in the same general area that I want them to be.
Yeah.
I shoot pretty much every day, weather permitting. I got a bag in the basement, so even on bad weather days, I go down and just like rip arrows into the bag. So now what I'm trying to figure out is, with a compound, I hold it where I want it to be out to like 30, 32 yards and just let it rip, right? And I'm going to be good. But I also know with this, it's like I'm not shooting as fast. And so now I'm trying to figure out, like, at what point do I have to start to shoot low, planning on them dropping a little bit, right? And so I'm just curious for you, like, what yardage kind of marker is that, or do you even think about that?
I don't. So in the beginning, I was compensating for every deer, thinking it was going to drop. I'm like, this bow's so slow, there's no way she's not going to drop, Right. And I missed a lot of deer low, shooting low, just shooting too low.
Right.
So I just learned to just aim at the deer, even I shot a buck the furthest I shot a buck was 25 yards. Like, absolute, that's my max stretch. And I shot low. And when I watched the video back, I didn't shoot low. I can't pretend like I shot low on purpose. I just shot low.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually hit him back. He took a step. But when I watched back to that video, this is 25 yards, and the deer didn't move. Didn't budge,
Why do you think that is? Is it just because the bow's so much quieter than a compound? Do you think they just don't?
I just think it's so situational, I think you can have those quiet mornings where your jacket rubs a tree and the deer are on edge, and I think maybe those mornings will be a little different, but I've honestly never had a deer. I mean, there's a couple, a video of me shooting a doe, and I could really slow it down and watch it. And absolutely, she drops, it probably, I want to say 15, 16 yards. She probably drops 2-3 inches, and I still hit, but like I'm always aiming, even with the compound, I get real greedy and I start aiming for that pocket, I want to it's like I want to heart shoot them, And
you and I are the same, brother. Yeah.
That's where my brain goes. My whole life, my pin followed that leg up, and I aimed right for that pocket. So I started doing that with the recurve, and knock on wood, it's never bit me. But actually, it did. 2 years ago, I had a buck at. So I had him at like, I don't know, 60 yards, and I just let out like a little grunt to get his attention, and he ran to the base of my tree like I just called my dog over. And I'm holding the recurve, and I'm going, no, because he's gonna go behind me, and my wind's in my face. He comes running in with the wind at his back, and he winds up like 3 yards, maybe 5 yards from my tree. I'm not that high. I'm 15 feet maybe, and it was a real steep angle, and I got greedy, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, without even thinking, it's just like instinct, I'm gonna heart shoot this sucker,
Right.
And I shot, and I went right through the webbing. So picture like so steep of an angle that I just rode the ribs and went through his armpit, trying to heart shoot him. I went right through that little webbing right there and didn't get into the ribs. And if I would have aimed a little higher and not tried to be greedy and heart shoot him, I would have stuck him perfect. But I missed a buck at 5 yards. That's where I say, that's going back to when you said, what's my ideal range? And I say like, 15, 18, 19 yards. It's because I think the steeper shots are harder. I've messed up more with close deer than I have with far deer,
It's because your words were ringing in my head as I've been, once I got my bow, my custom bow made, and I started shooting that, and was getting comfortable with that and kind of figuring out my ranges, where just what I'm comfortable with that bow. And it ended up being right around like between 15 and 18 yards is where I feel, because it's almost, I think look, I'm not a mathematician and not trying to pretend like I've been shooting a traditional bow for a long period of time, but you just start to see certain things with your arrow flight. and the way you're, because I shoot instinctively. So it's like the way my brain is calculating like the distance and like my arrow flight to put me on the spot, and it just seems to be the sweet spot where it's like I can pick my bow up and shoot it, and I'm going to land consistently like in the kill zone, like in a good group. When I'm closer, I tend to shoot a little higher for whatever reason, right? You'd think the closer you are, I'd be more accurate, but like my brain at closer distance has a harder time calculating like the rise of my arrow than it does like the drop of my arrow. I calculate the drop better than I do the rise.
Yep. I get that. It's like you have one pin.
Yeah.
Right? And you're putting that pin on it, whether it's 5 yards or 20 yards. Right?
Yeah.
And then, so let me ask you, do you think you are seeing your arrow in your peripheral vision?
I do not.
No. You don't see it all. Wow.
I look at it when I draw. Like I pick my bow up and I put some tension on the string, and I look at the point of my arrow, and I kind of set it like just directionally where I want it to be. You know what I mean?
Do and a little pre-aim and then come back and
just to kind of set my so I'm not wildly off. You know what I mean? And then I go through my draw cycle and I never see my arrow again. The only time I see it again is whenever I get to my point on distance, and then that's when I'll use it. Then
what's your point on?
My point on distance is like 25.
Okay, that's a good point on. Because in a oh shit moment, let's say stuff happens, and let's say you hit one at 5 yards and you get a follow-up shot. You're going to take it, and he's 25, or even if he's 30. At 30, you probably need to hold it at the top of his back.
Exactly.
I like having that like emergency backup plan, where like my point on's 30, so I know at 25 to hold at his belly, and inside of that, I'm really just shooting instinctive.
Yeah.
So 24, I still hold, at the base of his body, but.
Yeah. And that's what I did is like, and that was kind of like exactly the way I kind of thought about it, was that I don't really plan to shoot anything beyond 20 yards. It's kind of where I want things to be. If I have nothing but air and opportunity between me and them and not a lot of wind, 25, sure. And that's why I have my, my point on. But it was more what you said, where I was like, man, if I get a close shot and that deer runs out to 30 yards, I need to put another one in him. I know I can pull it back, and I shoot out to 30 yards in my yard, and I know I just need to let the tip of the broadhead ride on the very top of his back, and that's going to be.
That's something a lot of people don't talk about. I think like if you get another shot, it's like get another arrow in him. Like, like a lot of people don't want to go to the nitty gritty, but you got to do it. Get a chance to get another arrow in that deer, hit him somewhere, So,
how often have you seen that with tracking, where it's like another arrow would have just made the difference, right? Because you got mud out there finding deer.
You broke up for a second. I'm sorry.
Oh, what I was saying is like how often with your tracking with mud have you seen like if the person would have just been able to get another arrow, what made the difference?
All the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've walked right up to deer that were still, looking at me, and
really,
and in New Jersey you're not supposed to, which is kind of messed up. I think they need to change that law, but I believe you're not allowed to put another arrow in a deer at night time, if you're tracking at night and the deer's still alive. But I mean, how I feel about that is that once you put an arrow in an animal, it's your responsibility to do anything to finish the job, but that's
that's a messed up rule, I kind of feel the same way, right? Like if you put an arrow in it during legal light and you're tracking it,
you do everything in your possibility to recover it.
Because the alternative is that deer lays there and suffers, best case scenario, it dies overnight if you let it alone. Worst case scenario, it doesn't, lives for a couple more days and suffers. It's none of it's a good outcome in general. But well, man, I did want to talk to you because I know we trade texts and stuff like that during the course of the year, and whether it's text or Instagram or whatever. And I know you're getting ready to tackle to try to make a move. So how excited are you about the proposition of making that change?
I'm super pumped, man. Like, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm just like chomping at the bit here. We're really close to getting the pre-approval. You know, we kind of been talking to a mortgage guy, and we're going down our the checklist. You know, like getting credit cards under 30%. You know, debt rather under 30%. We got everything squared away. We're waiting for like one paper to be signed, and then we can get the pre-approval. But in the meantime, we're just absolutely torturing ourselves, like looking at stuff on Zillow and you know, my buddies. It turns out like one of my friend of a friend is a realtor in Ohio, and he's been like sending us places, and I'm like, dude, like I'm not like, you know, he's like, come look at this place, and I'm like, I need to get the pre-approval first. I don't want to come out there and be like, I don't want to come out there and be like, wow, I love it.
Right.
Talk, you know, in a month, 2 months, you know, or whatever.
And hope it's still around. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We made the mistake of like absolutely falling in love with this place. Like it was like 15-acre mini farm, pole barn, like checked every box, you know. It was like right at the top of our budget. Like thought we could probably swing it. And then we watched it like go under contract and I'm like, oh my God, if we were just a little bit ahead of schedule, you know, but so we kind of backed off looking, you know, and we're just waiting to get our ducks in a row and get that pre-approval so then we can then we could drive out there and be serious. But I'm so over where I live, man. I watched it go from, you know, when I was a kid, like hanging out on buddies' farms, and watched it go from that to
suburbia,
turning into strip malls and apartment complexes, and it's unbelievable what has happened here in the last 3 to 4 years. Really, like after COVID, everybody from the city moved here, and I can't be mad at them. I don't blame them. Builders are going to build, right? How do builders make money? So, but Maureen makes fun of me because we drive around, and I'm just used to be a bean field, used to be a cornfield. Shot a deer right there, right where that Wawa is, you know?
Right.
So she just, you know, anymore she's just like, let me guess, used to be a bean field. It's like, no, go, you know? I just pointed something, she's like, let me guess, used to be a bean field.
Right.
So, but
I mean, that's
sucks. It really sucked, like watching that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Area, and I'm hunting in ways that I've never hunted before, like in the tightest, the places these deer will live, resort to living when they just build everywhere is unbelievable. It's almost like the smaller of a piece you can get in, the better you're gonna do. You know, it's insane. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm curious, you know, as you're, as you're getting ready to move, you know, here in the not so distant future, you know, you're gonna have well, let me ask this. Maybe you have. Have you scouted any of the areas that you're thinking of moving to yet, or is it just like, you know, no? Okay.
No, it's such a broad area we're looking at, you know. Right.
What So what are the challenges of kind of like diving into some new stuff that you're anticipating? Right. I mean, you're one of the best woodsmen I know, right? So you're going to have no problem kind of adapting, but like, there's always like, you know, I know for me, at least when I moved to this area, like learning how to hunt swamps was like the thing for me, right? Cause I never had any of that growing up as a kid and stuff like that. So that was like the big kind of learning curve for me in this particular area, and hunting smaller parcels because it's just more suburbia, right? So that was kind of like my learning curve. So I'm just curious for you, you know, making that move, because you've hunted Ohio before and stuff like that. And so you kind of have an idea, but living there and hunting there, like what do you anticipate being kind of like the things that you're going to have to maybe change or maybe do a little differently, or that might be a challenge at first for you?
So I'm completely okay with it. And I said to Maureen, I'm like, you know what, I might not shoot a buck for a year or two, or, you know what I mean? I'm going to have to learn the area, you know. What I'm scared of is the terrain, hunting, you know, not quite mountains, but like hill country. You know, a lot of where we're looking is down by Athens area, you know. So we're looking from like Zanesville down to Athens, like the lower east, eastern, southern corner,
southeastern part of the state.
So there's definitely some terrain involved, and that's what I'm nervous about. You know, I'm not like it's pretty flat where I live. You know, when I say a ridge, like I'll call it a ridge, and most people are probably looking at it like this little tiny slope. You know, like
that's a mound.
Yeah, it's a dirt mound. I'm hunting on this ridge today, so it's pretty flat where I live. So I'm 100% ready to put in a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like her career that's carrying us out there, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna have any work once I move, so I'm gonna have to find a job.
Right. Right.
I'd like to bring my taxidermy stuff out to there, but before I can really get that rolling, like I'm gonna have to find a normal job. Probably driving a
Right.
truck again still,
Right.
and so I just plan on spending a lot of time.
Yeah.
Maybe not relying on cameras so much and just spending more time in the woods, because in reality, like, everything that I know around here is from spending time in the woods. Like, I know where to put cameras because I've spent time there.
Yes.
So it's hard to just go in blind.
That is the freaking rule right there, right? Like, people who talk,
You can't just
people
put out
who,
cameras and go,
right.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, people who don't like cameras, it's like they think that it's like the camera only works if you've spent time, right? And that's the false comfort or the false sense of security that people get using cameras, right? Like, someone who's newer, right, to the game, or someone who doesn't have the time to spend a lot of time in the woods. It's like, so right now in my life, the way things are, it's like I don't have a lot of time to spend in the woods just based on family things and stuff like that, like where we're at. So my cameras do a lot of work for me, right? But that's only because I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and I know where they need to be to give me the intel that I need to actually be able to hunt. That way, the time that I do get to spend in the woods, like to scout or whatever, it's to help me understand better what the cameras are telling me, right? Yeah. That's kind of how I use it. And so that's such a good point. It's like you have to spend the time there. I think a lot of how you approach things already, though, I think you're going to have a faster. I'm gonna make a prediction that you're gonna kill a good buck the first year you're out there. That's my prediction.
I hope so, man. I'd be on cloud nine,
Well, because like I think sometimes there's something to being in a new area where you start to use like the years of instinct that you've built up and not second guess, because there's not a lot of, you don't have expectation, right? And so you just start to do what we're supposed to do, right? Which is read the sign, figure out where the deer want to spend time, qualify the sign, like what quality of deer might this be or not be, what time of the year is this being made, is this warm, hot, or cold sign, like all those things you already know and do that maybe you don't do as often now because you're so familiar with the areas that you hunt, right? I think that you're just going to fall right into that, and it's going to happen a lot more quickly than you think. And I think this is my personal opinion, like from hunting flat and hunting hill country, because I grew up in and around hills. Hunting hills was always for me, it's easier than hunting flat ground. Like, just personally, it may not be the same for everybody, but I mean, the hardest thing for me in flat ground is that it's a double-edged sword. It's easier for me, at least, to predict how deer are going to move because there's obvious terrain that's moving them, right? And obvious kind of terrain areas. It's going to be ideal for bedding and things of that nature, right? But everybody else can see those too, right? So that's the part that's like the double-edged sword, right? Like you get the benefit of the deer having to kind of use it a certain way because like the terrain lays out a certain way to kind of dictate, right? But those obvious things are the things that everybody else is able to recognize too. And so then it becomes about finding like those little micro features, within the larger terrain features, or where like the gold nuggets usually are.
I could relate to that like so much. Like I've only hunted out of state three times, I think. And the one time I went to Missouri, I was finding like what you would call hot sign. And every time I find hot sign, there was people everywhere. Everybody else was seeing that hot sign. Like that's all I was doing, was running into people. And I stepped back and started hunting the terrain. And by terrain, I don't mean like so they just brush hogged a field. Like the guy from the county or wherever he was, state or whatever, was brush hogging a field on the one piece of public. And it created like an L, like an L-shaped and then like a hedgerow going into like the field that he brush hogged here. And Maureen always makes fun of me because I got a big nose and I swear I smell the buck. Like I walked in there and I smelled the buck. You know, I just smelled like tarsal glands, cut a track. And I sat there that night with my wind blowing, I don't know which direction, let's just say it was northwest, across the brush hogged field. And I'm like, I could see a buck coming up that hedgerow with the wind in his face. And then I'm on the corner, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm giving him the wind, my wind's going out into the field. He can come up through the thick stuff and cut the corner. And that's sure enough, I sat there that night and that was like the first rack buck I seen in Missouri, but it was getting away from the sign. Like I feel like the sign was day late, dollar short, you know, like the sign was already made. That buck, you know, everybody bombarded that sign because there were so many people around. And then I was finding bucks away from it, just hunting, like hunting the land, you know, rather. Yeah. And I would have shot that buck, but he was 30 yards. And that was my first year with a longbow at the time.
Right. But, yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example, right? Because that's the double-edged sword of it, right? Because they're going to lay down sign, you know, and those, well, like anything else, right? Like where they congregate or where a lot of the deer are spending a lot of the time, right? And so it's where they're passing through most frequently and stuff like that. I think the one thing that you'll find a benefit of out there is, you know, it's been talked about to death, but it's accurate. It's just finding, you know, in hill country where those thermal hubs are at, right? Usually where a couple features kind of come together. You know, it's harder to find that whenever you're in flat ground. Like every now and then you'll find it, you know, in and around the swamps and stuff like that. But it's not as, like in hill country, you can almost look at the map and you can tell where they're going to be, like in a general area, right? You're like, well,
so that's what I have to learn. Like I'm still learning about thermals. Like I would say my thermal knowledge is very basic, you know? You know, I can sit up against a river or sit in the morning and kind of have an idea. I'm always throwing milkweed. Just to check, you know, because I don't know well enough to be like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Like when they say thermals trump wind sometimes, like I'm still learning about that stuff. And then
where it gets real tricky at first, at least in my opinion, especially in some of the steeper stuff that I hunt in the one Big Woods piece that I, you know, had been hunting the past couple of years, is just your access in the mornings and evenings and stuff like that, right? Like, because, you know, like for example, the one area that I really wanted to hunt for like the longest time, there was a good buck in that area and I knew he was in there. I had an encounter with him the one year. I had all kinds of like truck hammer data on this deer, you know, and generally knew kind of roughly where he was at or where he was spending some time. And there was one setup that I wanted to hunt. And it was one of those setups where it's like, well, I really kind of needed to hunt it in the morning, right? Because I'm going to have a falling thermal, but I got to get set up correctly, right? And I didn't know 100% where he was bedded because, like, once the thermals start rising, it's like I can't get in there once things start to lift because otherwise I'm going to be screwed, right? And there's virtually no way to come in from the top. So in October you could really only ever hunt it in the morning, like because there was no other way to hunt it, right? Like an evening hunt in that spot. Even though I knew like an evening hunt in there was probably better, like I would have to hope I couldn't come in from the bottom because he was going to smell me because everything was going to rise to him. Or I'd have to make a big loop around and come in paralleling where I wanted to hunt and hope that he wasn't bedded above me and that I was just off enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To where, you know, that I keep my wind clean for access to where he's able to then kind of make his move down to where I was going to be, you know, in the evening and without smelling me. Right. So I had to he had to get basically east of me and he could still be a little north of me. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah,
but it's but you know what I mean? It's like you had to cut it like that because like you're going to just blow everything out that's above you, you know?
Sometimes it's just, you got to take the risk though, right? Like a lot of it's just risk and like I have a heart, like I don't like doing the same thing. Like if I'm doing something and it's not working, I'm changing it up. There's no way I'm not just hanging out all season in the same area and doing the same thing. Like I'm gonna change it up. But I have a hard time drawing that. Like where do you draw that line? Like, you know, am I is it a waiting game? Is it if I spend, every time it's a whatever win you need, if I spend hours in the stand, am I eventually going to run into him, or am I blowing it up and I need to move? Like, I feel like that's always a fine line. Like, let's say you did go in there and you're like, okay, taking a risk, going for broke, and then you would never know if you, like, when do you
would
say,
never
okay,
know.
I bumped him? You wouldn't know. You would just,
nope.
You'd have to just sit there a couple times. Maybe you bumped him the first time, and now you're sitting there
2 more times without ever saying, exactly.
Yeah, and he's on to you, but like, where do you draw that? That's what I always have trouble with. I'm like, man, like, is this a waiting game? Do I need to spend a couple of days here, or did I just, screw things up on the first hunt? Like,
I think like everything, it's circumstantial, right? It's how well do you know that deer? Probably is one of the things. Is he
go with your gut? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, is he going to just blow out of the area, right? Or did he just shift a little bit, or did you really not get close enough that it didn't bother him, right? There was one. A guy, I forget where exactly he lived. He's in Ohio. Heath Cisco. I'm sure you know of him from like the Lone Wolf guys.
Yeah.
I had him on once, and we were talking about a deer that he killed, and the way he used the thermals in that hunt was like expert level, to where this deer was like in this area. And I'm, apologize to Heath if he's listening if I mess this story up, but he was on this deer. It was a really good buck, and I forget how long he played cat and mouse with him, but he was in like a bulletproof setup where he just really couldn't ever get close enough to him. Cause it was just like, he was dealing with thermals cause it was in some hill country and stuff like that. And so he was, if I'm remembering correctly, he was kind of bedded on this hillside, and it was the same situation. It's like, you can't hunt him in the evening because he's going to smell you before you get there. You can't hunt him, in the morning cause you're probably not going to beat him back to bed. And, it was a challenge.
Yeah.
He ended up getting I think it was like a cloudy day. It might have rained or something like that. And the sun came out. And so the thermals were messed up. But what he ended up doing was following the shadow around the mountain, like the cloud shadows around the mountain, to where it's like the shadows kept that part of the mountain cool. So the thermal would drop, and he followed the shadow around until he got close enough, and then ended up killing that deer.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's like when I heard, when he told me that, I was like, dude, that is some next level, like, thermal play there, dude. I was like, that's some patience. And that's just some straight up woodsmanship there, man. It's like, you know, figuring out like, what is the way to kill this deer? There's a way. There always is a way. It's just a matter of like, whether you recognize it, or whether or not you see the chink in their armor, so to speak.
It blew my mind the first time I heard Cody Quisto talk about micro creep.
Micro creep?
Where
I don't know if I've ever talked to him about that.
I heard him mention it at the
roadshow thing.
The roadshow thing, and like, I was there as a speaker, and I feel like I was listening. I was learning. Like, I'm standing there. I'm like a student. Because I never really, like, basic thermals where I live. You know what I mean? It's he's talking about how the thermals could get sucked, kind of roll and get sucked under and go, like he brought up a scenario like, when the wind's in your face and a deer smells you at 30 yards away that's in front of you, and you're like, how the hell, what happened? You know what I mean? He's talking about your thermals getting like,
almost like eddies, like rolls back like a wave almost.
Yeah, like, I don't want to misspeak. It was something about the terrain and
a lot of times that'll happen. Times that'll happen where you're in you're sitting on the edge of an open area, kind of like there's an open area kind of in front of you, and like the wind and everything is kind of coming across like that. Open area might be heating up or whatever the case is because the sun's hitting it more or whatever. And like, you've got open area that the wind is kind of coming across, and then you've got like maybe a hardwood area that you're sitting in. But it's just like that wind or whatever's going to hit that, and there's going to be a reaction, right? And often it's a reaction where it rolls back like a wave, like it gets resistance, right? And so it creates almost like this little vacuum effect, right? Yeah. Like, I've talked to Dan Enfault about that, and that'll happen a lot, like on the edge of like where two open terrain meets kind of what I'll just call like dense terrain, if you will, right? Okay. The way in my mind it works, and this may not be accurate, so people don't like take this as like the gospel or that I'm acting as an expert on this, but in my mind, the way I kind of think about it is like, when you have something that has no resistance, and then meets resistance, there's often like this vacuum effect that happens, right? That there's a pushback, and that's kind of how I think about it. So you're going to oftentimes in those open areas get like a little bit of spill back out to where, the wind was coming from to a degree.
Okay.
But that's probably not exactly the way he was describing it, but in my mind, that's how I make sense of it.
That's how it works, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's like a natural vacuum that's happening there because you have like all the positive pressure coming from one area, right? Or I guess the positive pressure would be the resistance of like what it's hitting, and the negative pressure behind it is going to pull it back.
I just carried
there was everyone's physics lessons for the day, from a guy who doesn't know physics.
I'm just like a caveman, and I carry milkweed, and I just live and die by it. If it's not 100%. Going in where I want it, I'm just not afraid to move.
Yep.
I can get set up in early October when it's 75 degrees and be a sweaty mess. And if I throw that milkweed and it's not going where I want, I'm like, ugh, packing back up.
Get out of here.
They're just, sometimes, a lot of times I could just, readjust to try and cheat it, because I feel like my more successful hunts have been when I was threading the needle,
Yeah.
Like definitely giving them the wind, you lay eyes on the deer and you're like, oh my, your wind is just like quartering away, you kind of give them the wind, and that's like such a rare scenario to find yourself in. But whenever it happens for me, I feel like that's what's going on. It's a day that things weren't perfect.
Yeah.
The days that things are perfect and I go, today's the day, the wind's perfect, that's perfect. It's never the day that it happens. It's always the day that I doubt or question myself.
Yeah.
And thread the needle or completely give up on a deer and go, screw it, I'm going for broke. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to go in there. And that's really the day that it happens. It's not when I think I have things figured out,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, it's that old saying,
back to
right?
Taking that risk, just.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta, the deer, especially an old deer, right? He's not gonna, he needs something. You know what I mean? Like, he's got to have something that he feels like he has to his advantage, and if he doesn't, then he's not gonna play the game that you want to play. Like, you're playing two different games then at that point with him, But you mentioned October and being a sweaty mess and dropping milkweed and like, got to change stands or got to change trees or whatever the case is. And, I can always count on you to kill an October deer. Like, I feel like every year I see you posted sometime in October getting it done. And I know this year you had two, if I'm not mistaken, that you had on your radar that you'd watched for a couple years, right?
Yeah.
And you ended up killing one of them, right? Isn't that what happened?
The deer I killed was not on my radar.
No, he wasn't?
Same piece of woods. It was big woods. I mean, that's speaking for my area, like 500 acre piece, not like thousands of acres, but like that's big woods to me. And
right.
I had a couple of different bucks in that area, and not all that were like residents and lived there, but a couple pass-throughers. And I had one buck there that I thought was going to blow up this year. Last year he was real pomaded. Stickers.
I think you sent me a picture of that deer last year, actually.
Yeah. So I kind of put all my eggs in that basket, and I'm like, that's the deer I'm hunting next year. Like, I rarely, like, I'm more of like an opportunist, really. I want to kill a mature buck, but I'm going to kill the mature buck that's the most killable.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of thought that deer was going to blow up, and I got pictures of him. In September, nearing October, he showed up late. I had a mineral site there. Like, for most of the summer, and he wasn't on it. And then coming out of Velvet, he shows up, the shift. So he does the shift, and I start getting pictures of him, and he friggin' shrunk.
Really?
Dude, yeah, the deer's like probably 5 years old, and he shrunk.
Yeah, injury or something maybe last year?
Nothing that I could see. Nothing that I could see, man. Just, I think, I don't know, I'm learning a lot about aging deer. I've been sending all the teeth out to every deer I kill, and I'm learning a lot. I'm learning that I don't know how to age deer, and but,
right.
So, but for the better, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of the deer are older than I think. I'm looking at deer and I'm going, that's a 3-year-old, and and I don't live in Iowa or the Midwest, so
Right.
So your average mature buck around here is 130 inches. They're if you're if you're lucky, you get a 140, 150 is like a really good one, but
right.
So this year's got to be like 5. I've had like 3 years of pictures of him probably.
Mm-hmm.
Probably got my first picture. He was like a basket 6 at like 2. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. Who knows? I don't know shit.
Right.
But he shrunk. Yeah, but he shrunk, and it's 100% him. And it like blew my mind. I just lost stickers. Like he had split 2s. They're gone. He was basically the same frame without the stickers and the junk, but he had all these little stickers base coming off his base that he lost. And I don't know if that has to do with like how I've heard people talk about how wet the summer, how much rain we get in the summer, and with antler growth, and I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I have no clue if any of that's true. Like the one thing I think that at least my opinion and what I've heard like from people in the Midwest that I've talked to and things like that is that a lot of times like a deer will carry I don't want to say a gene like necessarily, but a trait that they're going to throw junk or abnormal points or whatever, and that usually is expressed with age more than anything. They either have it in them or they don't, and that it's expressed like as they get older. And it's weird though that he would lose them. Like, so it almost makes me, because like usually they don't express them, and then again, I'm not an expert, but I would feel like they wouldn't express them one year, and then not express them the next year unless there was some type of injury or the deer was stressed or it got sick or something like that.
And if I wasn't me and I was talking to me, and I'd be definitely doubting myself. I'd be like, yeah, right. I'm like, it's a different buck, dude. Like, just same genes, whatever, But he has a ripped ear,
right?
It's 100. Like I was following him from year to year,
and
then so then go to my number 2 for last year. Same thing, dude. Like, I let him go last year. He was a high, like, nice 8-pointer, and this year he shows up and he was like the same thing. His brows split. He had split brows, but he was the same frame. Like, didn't grow. He didn't grow at all.
Right.
And I feel like that's a struggle that we deal with here. It's just letting deer go, and then you're like
and then you just don't turn into what you were hoping they would turn into.
Yeah.
So
that's
what
a real struggle.
So what about the deer that you killed in? Like, where did this one come about? How did that all come together?
So that deer started showing up on a mineral site. I had him all summer, and it was one of those where like I wasn't even really looking at him because I was so focused on the sticker buck showing up and this other buck showing up. And this is all in the same spot. There's a lot of bucks in the area. They don't all really live there, but I get them. They pass through. And so I had that deer in the summer. He was living there. And you froze for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. So he was living there, and I wasn't really looking. I was like, you know what? He had a big belly on him, and he was a good sized deer in him. But I was more focused on the sticker buck. And then once he showed up late September, and I saw what he did, I was like, man. So I wound up shooting that buck on I think it was October 10th. And I just went out to sit. I had my mineral site dried up. The bucks, I'd get a deer past my camera here and there, and I went and I just sat on an oak flat, on a shifty wind, on one of the days where, all right, I get up on this hill and I angle and I just sit right in this tree.
And I click my heels together twice and say a couple Hail Marys.
It was one of those days, man, where like the wind wasn't perfect and I just wanted to hunt. I sat in a spot where I had a good visual on an oak flat. I'll call it a ridge, but you probably call it like a little bunny slope,
Right.
And the acorns were just, I don't know how it was by you, but the acorns this year, like, you needed a helmet. They were absolutely pouring. Like, it sounded like it was raining in the woods. So I just went and sat at oak flat, just like observation, see what I could see if I can get eyes on any of these bucks. Because in my mind, I made the decision that I was going to shoot that buck, that buck that lost to stickers. Because I'm like, you know what? He's probably 5. Like I don't think he was a year old when I got my first pictures of him, but he's
Right.
probably 5. I'm like, it's all I had going. I like to hunt. I'm not like
Yeah.
I'm not the guy who's not gonna go hunting because I don't have a buck to shoot. I'm gonna pick a
Right.
target and I'm gonna go after him. So I'm like,
You're gonna shoot what's around, like
yeah,
the older deer that are around your area.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I sit this oak flat, and my wind is like gusting. It's going where I want it, and then it's gusting where I don't want it. And it's going here and going there, going here, and it's swinging back and forth. And I'm like, all right, maybe he'll come in from that. Like, I'm just going through every scenario in my head, sitting there. And I don't know, it was probably 2 hours into my sit. I look and I see the buck that I shot. His one side's a little weaker than the other. He had like an injury to his pedicle.
Mm-hmm.
So I could tell it's that deer, and I could tell he's like better than I thought. So I get fired up. I start dealing with talking to myself, and so I'm watching him eat acorns at like maybe 60 yards in this oak flat, and he's working his way down across the hill, like kind of towards me, and I just remember I was like clipped. I had the hinge, but I'm like on my loop, holding my bow, facing behind me. Like he was coming in, which kind of worked for my advantage. He was coming in like the way I was positioned. I was able to hide behind the tree and kind of peek around, and because he wanted to smell me. That's why I say that kind of worked towards in my favor. Okay. So he's working towards me. He beds down at 40 yards, and I'm stuck standing there watching him bedded, and like this has never happened to me before. This is probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. My wind gusted in the direction I said it was going back and forth, swinging. It gusted towards him. Like it must have just touched his nose for a second. Like my wind went whoo whoo, and it was enough to get him to stand.
Okay. Yeah.
So when he comes out of his bed, and now I'm like, I'm going through this in my head now. I'm like, I got the compound. Am I comfortable with a 40-yard shot? Like he's gonna stand up. He stood up and he's standing there at 40. There's one. I think I would have took it with the hinge. He was broadside, but there was this one branch, and I don't like. I'll take risks on hunt, but I don't like taking risks on shots. Really,
Right. Yeah.
Just one branch that I just can't tell. Like, I'm used to shooting a recurve now, where my arrow goes like this.
Yeah. And you're not used to that flat trajectory.
40 yards, I probably would have made it right under this branch, but this one branch stopped me from shooting at 40. And when he came out of his bed, he like J-hooked and stopped and just looked. I don't think he smelled me enough to like really spook, but he like hooked out of his bed, and I ranged this one blowdown at 30 yards, standing in front of that blowdown, just like going looking like this to see what he smelled. And that was my window, man. I was already drawn back when we got to that blowdown. I'm like, all right, that blowdown's 30 yards. Put the pin right on him. Shot broke. Got greedy, hit him right in the friggin' pocket right there, to the point where I'm just like, home run, So I call my old man. I'm like, hey, park your truck next to mine. Where, I brought him in there before to hunt, so I'm like, where the general area I hunt. I'm like, just walk up on this oak flat, and I'll wave to you. So my old man meets me there. It's like 2 hours later now. I sat, calmed down, and we start tracking this deer. I go about 80 yards, and the deer, he gets up and runs.
What?
Yeah, runs away. And I'm just, dude, I just blew my mind. I'm like, I smoked this deer. I buried my arrow to the fletch, like right behind his shoulder. Like, and he was like, nobody believes me, but he was broadside. He was broadside, dude. Like, he was quartering towards me, and I was at full draw, and he did the step to go leave, and like was like, I'm getting out of here. Stopped one more time, and like that's when I sent it. And so we jump him. So at this point, I'm thinking, I'm like, the shot was forward, if anything. Like, I was right behind the shoulder. So we go I'm talking to my buddy, and he has his dog, and I didn't want to bring Mud because I don't, like, I trust her, but I'm like, when it's like comes down to like someone's like a buck or whatever, I'm like, you know what, my buddy has a really experienced dog. I'm like, well, let's just run your dog and see what happens. And
right,
we ended up jumping that deer again.
Jeez.
And this is the craziest story. There's a pond in the middle of the woods, and it's actually not in the middle of the woods. It's up against a retirement community. It's like the property butts up against this retirement community, which is super nerve wracking. The direction that the deer is headed, because now I'm going off the property, and I'm going into this like retirement community that's not posted. So I'm gonna go look for my deer, and
right.
I'd never seen anything like it, dude. So the deer knows that we're essentially chasing him now, because we bumped him, and then we're like, let's just push him a little further and see what happens,
Mm-hmm.
We got blood going into the pond. So now I'm with my flashlight. I'm looking. I'm like, he's dead in the pond somewhere. I'm like looking all around. I circle around the pond and find one little tiny drop of watery blood on the other side of the pond. And I'm like, he ran through it. Like, I 100% believe that they do that shit to evade you. Like, that's a scent break. They're trying to create a scent break where, like, in his mind, you're tracking him with your nose. You're a wolf, you're a coyote, whatever,
Right.
So he ran through this pond, and then that's where we called it. We're like, okay, he ran through the pond, backed out, go back in the morning. Now I have Mud with me, and I'm like, all right, let's just see if we can get back on this deer, So I tell my buddy, I'm like, yo, let's grid this big open, like, I don't want to call it CRP, but just like tall, overgrown, brushy, like kind of field, like chest, maybe chest high grass. So I'm like, let's grid this field. This way we could just exit off. Let's like run the dog through the field. Me and you just stay real close. He's like, I'm going to check the pond. I'm like, dude, he's not in the pond. He ran through it last night. Like, my buddy doesn't listen to me. I kind of get like, I'm like, whatever, dude. Like, go do what you're going to do. I start gridding the field with the dog, and I hear my buddy yelling, yo. He was floating in the pond, dude. He went back. He went back to the pond.
Jeez.
So we bumped him. He ran through the pond. He must have been bedded up somewhere. And then as he was feeling, not a long story short, I guess. But what happened was I hit one lung liver.
Okay.
So essentially that deer was living on one lung. Went, the liver shot, I guess,
is what did him in ultimately.
Yeah. Made him want water, and he went back, which blew my mind that he would go back. Crazy. But so he was dead in the pond. So after skinning the deer out, the only thing I could think happened was I was shooting a 2-blade mechanical, and I clipped the shoulder. Like, after I skinned him out, there was a cut on his shoulder. I think maybe when I hit him, he lunged back, and do you think it could have redirected that?
Sure. Like a redirect. That's what I think
happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only
when I was a kid, I was going
to say it's the only plausible explanation, right? It had to be some type of deflection, right?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody was telling me this story, I'd be like, dude, you were too worked up. The deer was quartering towards you. You didn't realize it. Like, I could totally see
if it was a newer hunter, maybe, but you've shot a lot of deer. You know what I mean?
When I was a kid, dude, I used to black out and not be able to tell you what happened. But like, I waited for that deer to go broadside. I waited for the deer to go broadside, shot, and then that's what happened. So it's like, don't get too excited. I never get excited until you find them,
Right? Dude, tell me about it. But happy ending nonetheless, though, man. And like, you always have the craziest tracking stories of like of almost anybody I know. It's like every time I talk to you about a deer you've killed, it's like, dude, wait till you hear this. And I'm like, it's great, man. But man, we've been chopping it up here for a little over an hour, man. I want to be sensitive to your time because I know you got up early, to hang out with me this morning. So I appreciate that. I want you to be able to get some more of your beauty sleep. To make sure you're ready to rock and roll tonight. But before I let you get out of here, man, let people know where they can find out more about you, follow along with you, all your hunting kind of escapades and videos, because I know you have videos and stuff that you put out too.
Yeah. I'm slowly getting back into the filming stuff, but I took a little break from it. But the YouTube and Instagram is East Coast Stick Bow. I forget where the underscores are. I think they might be after each word.
Right. I mean, but the algorithm's pretty good. You look for East Coast Stick Bow. Yeah. You'll be
I'll
good.
Pop up. So
awesome,
that's
man.
basically all I had. I had Facebook for like 2 or 3 months.
Stay off that shit.
I deleted it, dude.
The
knife. What's with the knife salesman and the ammo salesman?
I know, dude. I get like a knife guy trying to like sponsor the podcast from like Kathmandu like once a month or something. It's ridiculous.
There's so many knife people, man.
Yeah, I never knew there was that many knife makers in like whatever foreign land.
Yeah.
But well, cool, man. I appreciate you. It's always good talking to you, man. Good luck in the house search, man. I'm stoked for you to be able to get out to Ohio and get to some country that I know you've been itching to kind of get to.
Can't wait, man.
And whenever I finally get my first, when I draw my first blood with the longbow, you'll be on the text chain.
Oh, I hope, man. I hope to get that text. So.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there, too. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tacticam, Osseo Gear, Hawk Optics, Face Off E-Bikes, and Lathrop & Sons Boot Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.